Hey, this is John Lee Dumas, the founder and host of Entrepreneurs on Fire. And if you're wanting to learn how to embrace change and navigate through disruption as a leader, then listen to the Leadership is Changing podcast with my good friend, Denis Gianoutsos. He's prepared to ignite.
Welcome to Leadership is Changing. Each week, we and our guests provide information and insights through exploring leading change. This is taking your leadership to another level by finding the balance between executive excellence and personal well-being through stories that inspire real change. It's time to adapt in our fast-moving world when leadership is changing with your host, Denis Gianoutsos.
Hey, the other thing I would ask you here is, the name of the show is Leadership is Changing. Well, what does that mean for you when I say that statement?
So I believe that we, as leaders, need to be more human. I think that for far too long, we've had this sort of Taylorian management view of what leadership should be: time, emotion, command and control. And actually, it's about trust. If you really want a well-performing organization, it's about trust. It's about being human. It's why I talk about my disability, because they're hidden. No one need know. They may just think I'm an idiot because I'm late or spell things wrong. But I talk about it because I believe that's a leadership issue. And if I want people to change, then I need to be part of that, and I need to lead by example. And I think that actually when we show our humanity and our fallibility and we talk about it, then that makes people believe in us as human beings and want to engage with us, because I believe that we are only going to bring forward businesses through consensus and the will of our employee base.
Yeah. So it's like you humanize and you show the human side of you, as you said. There's the vulnerability side of it as well that's being shown. But then I think that's with all of that combination, that's where the trust is actually formed.
Yeah.
And I think that's just a beautiful combination, right? That it all comes together. So more or less people can relate to you rather than being that thing out there as a leader, the command and control, as you're saying. But not everyone can relate to that. But if you are human and being you, it's amazing what will actually happen.
Yeah. I don't think that you can motivate through fear for a long period of time. You can do it for a short period of time. You can force your will on people, but long term, it won't work. So you either have massive employee churn and terrible engagement and low morale, which has an impact on your company, or people just stop doing what to do. You have to bring people along with you, and I think that's really key in an area like I'm in, which has not been flavor of the month. I've had to use persuasion to get this onto the leadership agenda, because people don't perceive, it's a top money making item. And CSR, much higher up the agenda now this decade than it was 10 years ago or 20 years ago when I started doing assistive tech. But actually, I had to persuade people. And that means that you have to be human, you have to be relatable, and you have to talk in the language that they understand. So if you're doing your business case to your C-suite, then you have to talk to them in their language. But equally, if you're talking to people at coalface, you need to be talking in their language. There's no point using acronyms and management speak the whole time.
Yeah, so adjust to the audience. In other words, who's in front of you, and then make sure you adjust to them. Yeah, that's great. And I use, for a lot of organizations, the disability side and inclusion. For some of them, I'm sure that there is a tick in the box and they're just doing something there to get that tick in the box. But I think it's actually more than that, right? It's how do you look at it with the companies that you see, what you're seeing in the industry around the disability and so forth?
So let's be clear. Not a niche issue. There are between 1 and 1.3 billion people in the world with a disability. So that's either the population of either India or China. So who wouldn't want to address a cohort of the population of that size? It's crazy not to. Then as societies, we also are aging rapidly. So we have this rapidly aging global population. We need to deal with the mega trend of that. Because what we've also got is like this inverted pyramid where the older people who we traditionally supported through the financial contributions of the younger people, it's not going to work anymore because there are more older people than there are younger people. And the younger people are more indebted than the older people. So then we have to find ways to enable the older people to be active and self-supporting and make society sustainable. Now that has huge economic value. Gartner estimated that the global disability market is worth something like $8 trillion. Now that's a sort of halo, but it's still a huge sum of money. And it's like the defense budget for a couple of large countries, right? So that kind of money should interest businesses. So these people are around us, they're in our companies, they're people like me. It's the only diversity group that any of us can join at any time in our life. It's intersectional, and pretty much if you live long enough, you're pretty much 100% guaranteed to end up with a disability, because age and disability are interrelated. So that's why it's worth engaging. But then also, actually, people have this kind of idea that you want it to be a charitable thing. I have no problem with making good money out of doing good things. And I think that businesses can have viable business model doing good stuff. Why is it only okay for businesses to make money doing bad things? Why should we make more money out of destroying the planet than building it up? I think, and that is where leadership and mindsets and the global consciousness is changing, right? To bring it back to the theme of your podcast, that's where the real change is happening. Because I think that there is a real change in people's mindsets about, we need to do something different. We need to do business different, and we need to restructure our society. And I think that COVID-19 has probably just pressed the accelerator pedal on that.
Yep, totally agree. And so leaders' mindsets and people looking at things differently. Do you know, so you may not know, Neil, but some of my listeners do know, and that is, I went through a period of time whereby my voice became very hoarse. And long story short, after so many years, they found a tumor on my left vocal cord. And for me, a lot of it was, this is my tool to be able to speak and do the executive coaching, the facilitation, the podcast, and so forth. It's not a hammer, it's not a computer, it's not a printer, it's the voice. And so there was no support groups in our area, or actually in the country, around voice dysphonia that we could see. And so trying to do that and still working for a large global corporate and then struggling at times, it was really quite interesting to see and actually experience. So I think there's a guy that's got talent, according to the people I work with, who are saying, okay, he's got a raspy voice. But then it was, for me, emotionally to go through that was quite hard. But then we as a team looked at it, we addressed it, we got on with it and moved forward with it, which was really quite good to have that kind of support. Where I know there's a whole lot of other leaders who don't support people with the disabilities and so forth. And I think it's really quite interesting how you're talking about the leader's mindset. We need to understand things, we need to do things, we need to do it. It's okay to do it. But the leader's mindset may need to change around some things as well going forward. Hence, leadership is changing. Now, the show is called Leadership is Changing, and that term, leadership is changing. When I say that, what does that mean for you, Don?
I think years ago, being a leader meant you had a big title, you had a hierarchy. It was always, everybody was chasing the brass ring. It was, and I tell people all the time, everybody wants the compensation and the title and the privileges of leadership, but many times people don't really want the responsibility of leadership.
Right.
Today, leaders, to me, to be a great leader, you have to be first and foremost a multiplier of talent. You have to be someone who is identifying talent, growing talent, mentoring talent, recognizing talent, and moving talent around the organization. Oftentimes, if we have a great person that works for us, we don't want to let them go. But the responsibility you have is to seed the rest of the organization with great talent that you develop and grow and develop. And I think it's not so much anymore about your title and your trappings. Those things still are important, but it's more about the experience that you have, the ability to recognize and grow talent. And often, and it's important that when you put somebody in a leadership position, that they do have the experience. That it's okay that they are maybe a little green, or maybe they're not quite ready. But let me give you an example. Oftentimes I'll see leaders get moved into a position and they don't have the experience to draw from to know what to do in situations. And they may know intuitively what to do, but if you don't have real life examples of where you've dealt with it, it's hard sometimes to be able to do it. A great example is, hey, Dennis, you know how to drive a car, right? And you drive on the opposite side of the road as I do.
Oh, you mean on the right side of the road?
Yeah, the right side of the road. But you know your area, and you go to work, you drive to your grocery store, you drive home. But if I took you and dropped you in the middle of South America, you still know how to, and put you in a car that you never drove before on the other side of where you drive right now and told you to go to a location. You still intuitively know how to drive. But as you're getting in the car, you're not familiar with how it operates. As you're moving to where you're going to next, you have to look at maps. You're slower. You're not as, because you haven't done it before. But after a few months in that location, you would be just as efficient as you are where you are.
Yeah.
So the more that we have actual tangible experiences to draw from, the quicker our ability to ramp, the quicker our ability to react, the more we're able to use our more advanced part of our brain rather than just the rudimentary part.
Yeah, that's a great example there, Don. And you're right. I think that, yeah, you're right. I remember every time I was coming to the US to do events and things like that, and I would get off the plane and then have to jump in a car, a rental car, and then be on a different side of the car driving and then on a different side of the road, while also being jet lagged. And that whole combination, yeah, sort of struggled.
You're not at your best. You're not at your best.
Yeah, you're right. You're not at your best. And so, yeah, it's really interesting. Hey, something you said before about a responsibility for these growing this talent there, but sometimes we don't want to see them go. And the number of times I've seen leaders get upset that this person that they've grown and so forth is moving on to another role. Well, what would you be one or two things you might say to those leaders who do get upset and don't want to let go of their people?
I think the thing that I would be saying to those leaders is, wow, that's great. You've done a great job. You've developed a future leader that's now moving on in the organization. And in fact, I challenge companies to measure a leader's success, not by how strong their own team is, but how many people that used to work for them that are now up in senior positions around the company. And in fact, one of the things I liked about Jack was he used to measure that. They used to measure that at GE. If you were a leader that developed, let's say 10 people that were in the top box of a 9 box, that was actually seen as a very strong thing. And you were compensated for that. You were rewarded for doing that. You need to, as a company, you need to put more value on the development of leaders rather than your own team. One of the things I'm most excited about when I came to Milwaukee, here I am coming to Milwaukee, a city I don't know. And about 6 or 7 people that have worked for me at HP and previous 3 or 4 companies, they've joined me. The fact that people have worked for me, in other parts of the country, other companies, and they want to come join me tells me they must think I'm doing something to help them grow and develop their careers.
Sure.
And by the way, they've worked for me, they've done great things, and they've left and gone taking bigger jobs, and then they've come back. Our jobs as leaders is to really take the talent and grow and develop it and then set it free. Because as much as I like to think of myself as a good leader, there's other things they can learn besides just working for me. I would tell that person, take pride in the fact you're developing leaders for the rest of the organization. And who knows, that person may want to come back and work for you someday.
Yeah.
And Dennis, one final thing on that. The more that you can demonstrate to your people that you care about their career more than you care about your own, the more that they're going to actually help you, the more that they're going to believe in you. Because when your people think about what's important to them, they want to be compensated competitively. They want to be recognized for the contributions they give. They want to work for leaders who will grow and develop them, who care about them and will mentor them, leaders who will inspire them, who will give them hope, purpose, who will give them a vision. They want to work in an environment where they can grow and develop and move up, and they want to work with colleagues they enjoy and have the tools and technology to do their jobs and do them effectively. And if you get those things, that's what a leader's responsibility is.
Fantastic, Don. Yeah. And you know what? I just watched, I remember you and I sitting in a room in the Philippines. And then there's another example too of you and I sitting in another room in Palo Alto, and we had talent around us and you had individuals working for you. And then the other one that was working for another very senior executive. But just to watch both of those groups and the roles they've gone off to go and do and see how they've succeeded and see how you've actually inputted into their life, their careers and so forth, has been tremendous to see it. And it's not just people talking about it, it's actually watching it happen. And actually being part of it as well. And I think that you're so right. And I think that's the success of the leader. It's our success story, watching others go off to do very well. Hey, Don, go on.
Yeah. No, I was going to say, Dennis, remember we created the MAP program, the Management Association program for HP, for the junior HR people. And if you remember, I always made my chief of staff position when I was in Singapore, a MAP. I always wanted a MAP, and I rotated one every 6 months. And the reason why I did that is you give somebody young and talented the exposure to what it means to be a senior leader. It's amazing how it fast-tracked their career. And almost every single person who was a MAP for me in that time and after that has gone on to be a CHRO or a senior HR person at large environments. I can't even tell you how many and some people multiple times. It's incredible how if you give talent the right opportunities, how they'll take advantage of it and move and grow from it.
Yeah, just give them the opportunity, let them fly, let their wings spread, and there they go. Let's change gears a little bit here, and let's ask you a question around who's your favorite leader? Now, this person can be alive or from history. You may have several, but who's your favorite leader and why?
This is a very interesting answer to your question because I didn't know we were going to go so deep into the musical metaphor, but I think the universe has arranged for this all to culminate with the answer. Diane Pope, who was an incredible orchestra conductor for me in high school, junior high and high school. Now, the reason why she was such a great conductor, and she's still living, is she really inspired a bunch of hormonal kids, right? To not only play in tune, but play with passion and be dedicated and be disciplined. And she saw in me something that was special. Now, I think she may have also seen that I was struggling at home. And what she did was she arranged for me to study with a college professor at Drake University in 8th grade. That was terrifying, but so good for me. And I said, yes. I don't know how I had the goal to do that, but I guess under her guidance, I felt safe. But that was just extremely terrifying. But to watch her manage us humans, pull out the most music possible, and then show up at the podium during concerts in a ball gown with her hair done just gorgeous. She was beautiful. And I didn't know at the time that being a female conductor was a rare situation, especially back then. I think it still is, but she was brilliant. And I think I learned leadership skills as well as grace, as well as how what you wear actually can make a difference.
Yeah, beautiful. And I love the fact about the grace and about the fact that what you wear can make you beautiful and out there. But also it sounds, and I don't know, you tell me, but it sounded like to me, because I'm summarizing pretty quickly here, it was that even though she was a woman conductor, she was just out there and did her best with the team and did it with grace, which is a great way to do it. That's excellent. What a wonderful example and role model for people to follow. And we have the college that I went to. When I say college in this country, when we say college, it's high school, an equivalent to the US. We call college university, right? And so when I went to college here, we had a sort of a Latin sort of saying, which was limina abset et imperiati, which meant was take the light and pass it on. So it's almost like Diane Pope has given you the light and was taking the light and they'll now pass it on to you.
I love that. Yes. And I actually really do highlight and write about her in my memoir that's coming out in March. And not everyone in my life got to make it into the book. It would have been a 3,000 plus page memoir, but she really was that beacon of light. And I'm happy to pass on the light after her.
That's wonderful. Well done. Alrighty. So the show here is called Leadership is Changing. When I say that title or that statement, what does it mean to you?
It's more of a personal thought rather than an organizational or a global thought of leadership. And for me, what I learned over the pandemic, which we're still in, by the way, is not that I have to remind you, but is that I now understand more specifically that the people in your organization are the absolute most precious gem to protect and develop. I know in the world of entrepreneurship, that said a lot, but I'm not sure if it's really focused on in big business and larger businesses. And I can see how it would be a challenge because there's so many layers of management and there's a whole group of people that upper management have no idea who that is. I'm wondering if what I actually realized as an experience that the people that work for my company are the most important thing, if that will ripple through all businesses of all sizes in the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well said. I think you're totally right. And if you think about, if I think about the events and entertainment business that you're in and been in and so forth, what you actually do in events and entertainment is that you create an experience for people. That's what's happening. And then, so you've used the words just now about an experience for those employees or for the members of the team and so forth. And I think you're so right. The bigger the organization gets, they start to forget about that experience, about people and about the individuals. And then I see a lot of organizations talking about their customers and stakeholders and sales, and they always leave people to the last piece. And I think that should be one of the first pieces, right? Because they are the most important thing. If you don't have the right people on board, it ain't going to work. If you don't actually have people on board, it doesn't going to work.
Yeah. I didn't understand that viscerally well enough, in my opinion, before the pandemic. And I'll tell you what has happened when I finally came to that realization is that I think, of course, my team is happier than ever, but I'm happier than ever. And sometimes you have to look at yourself. Sometimes you have to do things for yourself. And it's funny to think that I didn't completely get that pre-pandemic, but we all are on this journey and we have different milestones and different pacing to get to them. And I guess I'm just a slightly late bloomer.
The thing here is that, as you said, we all learn, but we all learn at different stages. And I think it's just great to hear leaders saying that they've learned from something and now I can move on and do things and so forth, which is good, right? Because as leaders, sometimes there are some leaders. Natasha, I've done an episode recently, which was in relation to take both masks off. I think we've got the COVID mask that we're wearing, but leaders are hiding behind another mask, and that is their title or their ego or other stuff as well, and not really bringing the true person to the picture.
I think bigger success happens when you're able to let go of that mask and that ego and realize that it actually is doing you a service rather than a disservice. So again, that comes with time and wisdom.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Leadership is Changing with your host, Denis Gianoutsos. Each week, we and our guests provide information and insights through exploring leading change, inspiring executives and leaders to adapt and lead a bigger game in a fast-moving world.